Oda, what are you doing? What are you doing to my precious boys, the Knights of God? Oh, how they have fallen, brother. It's funny. When we first heard about the God Knights, across the board, everybody was like, oh my God, these guys are gonna be impressive. We saw the Gorsei at Egghead. Yeah, performance was kind of middling. You know, people argue about that left and right, but that set expectations for the God Knights, brother. It really did. And then the first God Knight we saw was Shanks' dad. Oh, people have Shanks in their top 3s consistently. So his father? Oh, the expectations were sky high. And then we hear that not only does Shanks' dad exist, but he was the champion of God Valley? Oh man, there was never a better time to be a God Knight fan than back in 2022. But then we entered Elbaf, and I'd say things were looking pretty decent. Of course, Scopper kind of no-diff St. Somers, but that's to be expected. Pirate King's left-hand man, yes, he would destroy most characters in the verse. And of course, St. Somers was surprised by Scopper's appearance. We can cope about it a little bit. But then we hit the Elbaf flashback. The flashback showed us what really happened at God Valley. Garling, he might have actually been the real champion, but not for the reasons we expected. It's not because he performed well against Garp, Roger, and Rox. No. He is the champion because he was the one who killed the most innocent women, children, and men. Hey, at least he got a W, boys. And then we saw the rest of the God Knights alongside Garling, and they aren't looking too good. Maffy was destroyed by Whitebeard. Whitebeard didn't even know she existed. St. Somers got blasted to Kingdom Come after trying to attack an armless Shaki. And then the rest of the God Knights just never made an appearance. It's crazy. Garling said, God Knights to me! Rally alongside me! And then guess what? Some of the God Knights went on their merry way attacking more slaves. Brother, what are we doing here? And the funniest thing about all of this is that Oda built these guys up as if they were going to be those boys. Like, brother, Oda introduced 4 factions at God Valley twice, because we got it in the Kuma flashback and we got it in the Elbaf flashback. Oh, Garp's fleet! The Roger Pirates! Oh, the Rock's crew! And right alongside them, right alongside those introductions, the Knights of God! Oh, dude, the potential was there, man. And that's the thing. You'll see people, I bet in this video even, saying, oh, I always thought the God Knights were trash. I never thought they were going to be that strong. That's fair. But that didn't have to be the case. You know, that is a fair thing to say. You never thought that they were going to be that strong. Cool. But they could have been that strong. Oda built them up in such a way where they could be powerhouses, and it would make sense. They don't have to beat Roger. They don't have to beat Rox. They simply just have to look impressive. You know, all it is. You know, they just have to not go down in 1 or 2 blows. You know, they gotta clash a little bit. You know, they gotta show off some hockey. You gotta have some characters sweating, saying, oh, this guy's kind of powerful. We didn't even get the bare minimum for these boys. It is crazy. And then 1170, Stopper. You know what? I've never fought a Holy Knight with Conqueror's Haki before. Of course, there's cope there. There is cope. We could simply say that the ones with Conqueror's Haki fought Rayleigh and Roger. Maybe that's it. But because there's room for doubt, it doesn't look so good, brother. And, you know, as far as like how these guys could have been powerful and how it could be explained, that's simple. You could simply say that they're up in the Holy Land. They don't leave that often. Like Shanks said in 1170. Yes, they think they're gods. They don't leave. And of course, they're Emu's bodyguards. It's like Squad Zero out of Bleach. They're busted beyond belief. But guess what? They don't interfere with the lower world because that's not their job. It could have made sense. But these guys, man, they're not looking too hot. Maybe we'll get back here in Elbaf. They'll look better. And of course, because you need Conqueror's Haki to actually put these guys down for good, they are at a certain threshold, right? They're not exactly fodder, but they're just at the bottom of the ring, right? It's kind of like how people view Big Mom. Oh, Big Mom is a Yonko. She's very powerful. She's simply the weakest Yonko. That's what it feels like with the God Knights. Yeah, they are strong. When you look at the upper echelon, they do belong there, but they're at the bottom. That's just how it is. And I held a couple of polls in regards to my boys, my God Knights here, and look at this result, brother. Question: are you impressed by the Knights of God thus far? 10,000 votes, brother. That is an entire stadium full of people. Are you impressed by them? 6%. 6% of people said, you know what? These guys are menaces. Yeah, let's go. But 51% are in the meh category. 50-50. Not exactly impressed, not exactly underwhelmed. And then here we have it. 43% say that these guys are bums. And if you're wondering what this image is, it is chopped liver. Because by Jove, that is what they are. You know, you can cut them up 1,000 ways, and they just keep on coming back, man. I fall in the buns category. And I'm saying that as a guy that really wants to believe in them. So far, they're buns. But I do think that there are ways to make them feel really impressive. Now that Emu is here in Elbaf, maybe we'll see Emu give Gunko, Sommers, and Killingham buffs. Maybe Emu works like 5G Wi-Fi. Now that Emu is here, all the God Knights across the board, everybody who is in close proximity to Emu is 10 times stronger. Maybe that's it. Maybe Emu ranks them up. Maybe that's it. Hell, maybe Emu even ranks them up when it comes to their Mark of the Abyss and they get Conqueror's Haki. Kind of like how people meme on Shanks saying, oh, you know, Haki Knots from Roger, Haki Knots from Rayleigh. Maybe Emu will hand out Conqueror Haki Knots or Conquer Haki Magic to the God Knights. There are ways to make them stronger. Hell, even looking at what Shanks said about the Mark of the Abyss and how it functions, he said, oh yeah, even if you're just a tier 1 God Knight, you can still be controlled by Emu if you're close to them. Maybe we can take that and say that yes, the closer you are to Emu, the closer you are to God, the stronger you become as a God Knight. There are ways to make it happen. But, of course, that is simply speculation. And we have to keep in mind that a lot of these God Knights have not exactly been introduced yet. All we have is Maffy, Garling, Sommers, Killingham, and Gunko. Outside of that, we don't really know too much about these guys. There's still a solid 5 or 4 God Knights that we have not met. Getting into the comment section, we're gonna blow through these and see what people are saying. Top comment, Gunko and Shamrock trying to hold up the God Knight stocks. Yep. I mean, Killingham too, right? That's one thing to keep in mind. While we can say they're not impressive in terms of upper tier characters, they are still upper tier characters. Like Killingham, for example, he's going around essentially beating Elbaf, right? St. Sommers is beating Elbaf. These guys, without Straw Hat intervention, they would win here on this island, hands down. But, of course, like I said, when you compare them to other higher tier characters, that is when they don't exactly look that great. So while we're saying they're unimpressive, we're looking at this at a different scale than just, you know, your run-of-the-mill characters like Bellamy or Dellinger, Gladius, like all them, right? Like, we are holding them to a different tier. And of course, because this is the final saga, we don't exactly have room for underwhelming characters, I would say. Which is why, like, you'll probably see some heavy criticisms here. So just keep that in mind. Brooke got kicked out of the God Knights because he got too strong. No! The Brooke God Knight theories, man. Oh my God. They're strong until they actually fight strong characters. There we go. Yeah, and this is pretty much what I said a second ago, right? They're upper echelon, but they're near the bottom. Of course, that could change when we see more characters fight, like Shamrock, Garling current day, the God Knights we haven't seen. But as far as Maffy goes, oh man, dude, Maffy, so much negative PR around here, brother. So much negative PR. And this says, I get the impression Garling would get an empty, expensive bottle of tequila, pour in dog water, and flex on the gram to attempt to get out of Aura bankruptcy. Shamrock and Gunko are hard carrying. Gunko was impressive, honestly. Yeah, so Gunko did perform really well against the Straw Hat so far, but when it comes to regeneration, I feel like some of these characters get really cocky. Like Gonko, yes, beat all of them, looked great, but you know, we see Usopp land a Skullgrass bomb on her, and half of her face is missing. And it's like, brother, if Usopp put Conqueror's Haki behind that, that would have hurt. So yeah, I think Gonko does look really good, but I just wish that even though they have regeneration, that they just dodged a little bit. For aura's sake, it's like Majin Buu, right? Majin Buu can regenerate infinitely. But Majin Buu doesn't just get hit willy-nilly. You know, Majin Buu still dodges, man. Same with Cell. They still dodge, even though they can regenerate. I kind of wish like the God Knights didn't just, you know, act as punching bags on the side. They are basically the Team Rocket of One Piece. Are you impressed by the worst villain faction in One Piece thus far? Man. Oh, I don't know if you guys remember, brother. When they first talked about the God Knights, when Dragon dropped the silhouettes, honest to God, you know, hand on the Bible, people were saying, guys, this faction is going to be the One Piece equivalent of the Akatsuki. Oh, the good days. The good days. Yes, I never felt like they needed to be insanely strong like some people, but the fact that they all are just cool characters with unique personalities and designs means so much more to me. Yeah, I mean, it could have been both. Yeah, that's the thing, right? They don't have to be strong. You know, they can still be fun characters on the side, like you said, but it could have been both. And this is what I dial it back to. I still like them. You know, just because they're underwhelming doesn't mean I'm going to stop cheering them on. It's like Bellamy, dude. It's like Bellamy, you know, or even Barbell. They're losers right now, but I always hope for the best. I really do. I really do. Shamrock will redeem them. Yes. Shanks' brother, he's got to be powerful, right? He's got to be. If they were introduced before Egghead, they'd be a lot cooler. Oh, dude. If these guys were like pre-time skip villains, ooh, that would be insane. You know, like if they were introduced pre-time skip, we couldn't beat them. Post-time skip, they were still really powerful until Luffy masters Conqueror's Haki. Yeah, like any arc before Elbaf and Egghead, they would have been mad. Like the stocks would be through the roof. But because the power scaling ceiling keeps on getting raised, I think that's just why they don't look that impressive. Shamrock carrying the whole God Knights on his back right now. Yeah, okay, what Shamrock said was really awesome, and I hope he wasn't just spitting on our ass. But gotta remember, when Loki was chained up and Shamrock and Gunko were beating him black and blue, Loki said, hey, I'm gonna get revenge. I'm gonna beat you. And Shamrock, he had a really good rebuttal. He said, hey, even if you were not chained up, the results would be the same. Maybe. Shamrock wasn't lying. I hope he wasn't. And to be fair, you know, like I said, this is Shanks' brother. We could argue until the cows come home, is Shamrock stronger, weaker, etc., but he's around Shanks' level, right? He gets the twin tax. So hopefully he was cooking there. They're the Team Rocket of One Piece again. I genuinely couldn't stop laughing during the Garling scene in the latest episode. I remember reading it in the manga, and the Gorosei reactions are just too funny, as they have context to Garling's achievements. Yeah. Harold carrying, and he got whooped in one single panel. Okay, to be fair, he was fighting for a good minute. You know, Harold, I don't count him as a God Knight because he's really just the king of Elbaf who was working for them for a different goal. But, you know, in terms of God Knights, Harold, he was a great character to have in the roster. But you can't count him, you know? It's like Garp and how he's a vice admiral. When you scale vice admirals, you don't consider Garp as a vice admiral. He has the title, but there's a night and day difference when it comes to Garp and the rest of them. I think a lot of people kind of view Harold the same way. Do people not comprehend that if you don't have advanced Conqueror's Haki, facing the Holy Knights is a death sentence? They know Haki, Immortality, OP, Devil Fruit, Super Strength. Only select few on the seas could even have advanced Conqueror's Haki. Yes, that is true. And, you know, that goes back to what I said earlier, right? They are at that caliber. But when you compare them to everybody who has advanced Conqueror's Haki, they essentially get necked. If you have advanced Conqueror's Haki, you just win, essentially. Unless, like, these God Knights have more in their bag, that's just kind of how it is, which is a little bit unfortunate, right? You would hope that, you know, when you have advanced Conqueror's Haki, it finally puts you on the tier to fight them. But no, if you have advanced Conqueror's Haki, seemingly so far, you kind of just win. On to the next poll. This one says, does Garling have Conqueror's Haki? So this kind of stems from the last chapter where Scopper mentioned, hey, you know, I've never fought one with Conqueror's Haki. Could just be that he's never fought Garling. You know, if the God Knights ever rolled up on the Roger Pirates and Garling was on board, I'm assuming that Garling would fight Roger, right? There's no reason why Garling would go over here and clash Scopper Gabon while he has a whole crew behind him. So you could simply interpret it as that. And then, of course, when it comes to Conqueror's Haki, there's no age limit to it. You can unlock it as early as 10 years old, like Doflamingo or like Ace. Or you could unlock it... What's the latest unlocking of Conqueror's Haki? We don't really know. We don't really follow too many characters in their journey to unlocking Conqueror's Haki. But hell, you could unlock it at the ripe age of 50 for all we know. So yeah, maybe Garling could have just unlocked it throughout the years. But looking at this poll, it looks like the Garling love is still there. They're standing strong, brothers, because out of 13,000 votes, 69% of people think that Garling does indeed have Conqueror's Haki. And one thing to keep in mind too, you know, you could even say Garling didn't have it at God Valley. He didn't have it yesterday, but he does have it today because he is a Gorosei member now. And when it comes to the Gorosei, we've pretty much seen every single one of them with Conqueror's Haki. We saw Marcus Mars walking through a building, knocking out snails. Saturn has done it as well. Warkity has Conqueror's Haki. The only two that we haven't seen explicitly use it is Venus and Jupiter. But since 3 of the Gorosei, 3 out of 5 have it, I don't think it's too crazy to say that Venus and Jupiter have it too. And then, of course, when they're spawning through the Abyss Circle, Conqueror's Haki is going crazy. But yeah, I think that Garling as a Gorosei member will have that COC. And this kind of goes back to the whole thing about Emu. Maybe that's even just Emu's Conqueror's Haki and he's just giving it to them, which that would be a little bit painful. But yeah, 69% believes he has it, 31% believe that he doesn't. And look at this Vivi picture. This is real, by the way. This is a real image. And let me tell you, man, don't let anybody lie to you. A big forehead just means that you have a bigger canvas to work with. And I love it. You know, big foreheads unite. I think there's nothing wrong with a dome this big. Top comment. Emu gave him unlimited Haki Knots for finishing off that damn Davy clan member. Imagine that, man. Hey, guys, my sword, it's not piercing Roxy Zebek. Quick, somebody hand me a Haki Knot. He's not dying. Oh my God. Yeah, that'd be nuts. That'd be nuts. Vivi's forehead definitely can shatter Ravnir in a Haki clash. He stole some of Shanks' Haki Knots from Shamrock. I love the Haki Knot agenda, brother. This is so funny. You know what's hilarious, too? I posted a meme. Obviously, all jokes, but it's like, oh, you know, Shanks was using Haki Knots against Kid. That's why he whipped out the Kamusari. It wasn't his attack. It was Roger's Haki Knot. And I was just talking about that, laughing it up. And somebody DM'd me, and they were like, oh, what's the panel for that, huh? Where are you pulling this from? What's your source? And I was just taken aback, and I was like, no way. Obviously, I didn't respond, but I do look back at that moment, and I was kicking my feet. I was like, brother, what is going on here? No way they don't know that's a joke. This says, after what Rox did to him with his ego, I'd be baffled if he didn't lock in and grind the shit out of his Haki, then taught Shamrock to lock in too, because some of these insects are no joke. Not to mention, he's one of the Gorosei, and all of them have had advanced Conqueror's Haki enough that Joy Boy's Haki had to remove them from the battlefield. Yes. This is good Cope here at the end. I love it. I love it so much. And as far as like locking in, I do agree with this too. I mean, hell, look at Luffy. Look at any character in a shonen series. After they lose, after they suffer defeat, that is when they get stronger. I look back at God Valley. I look back to all those Roger Pirate confrontations. And my takeaway, as a Knight of God defender, maybe that was their Marineford. Maybe that was their Saboti. They look back and they're like, oh, damn it, Roger. Guys, let's go train. You could say they had the best sparring opponents in the world. The Roger Pirates, they're crazy. And going back to what I said earlier, I never expected them to beat the Roger Pirates. I just expected them to get a little respect. Like, oh, yeah, you know, thinking back at it, Shanks, those God Knights were kind of crazy. You know, those God Knights were actually quite powerful. They pushed me back a couple of times. But instead, when talking about the Knights of God, Scopper kind of looked like he was just having fun with it. He was like, yeah, you know, we used to beat him left and right. You know, St. Somers, it takes me back, brother. Oh, man. What if the tier 3 mark granted him a yokai transformation and an infinite pool of Haki Knots? Yeah, I do like this. You know, we have seen, you know, going back to the whole thing, we've seen pretty much every Gorse member have a transformation. So Garling getting a promotion, I think he now has one. I think he transforms into something wild. If I had to guess, I'm just going to go back to the OG theories and say that he is a Fenrir werewolf monster. Of course, nowadays, when you talk about Fenrir, people talk about Loki. But before Loki was associated with Fenrir, Garling was unironically that guy. There are multiple theories about it, so I wouldn't mind that whatsoever. In God Valley, Garling doesn't have Conqueror's Haki, but after getting promoted to Gorse, he's gotten Imu's Haki Knot, Seal. Yes, I believe that once you hit the Abyssal level Covenant, you get Conqueror's Haki outside of the anti-aging factor. Man, conquered Saturn's chair. You just couldn't see the Haki, but the elders felt it. Yeah, they were sweating. Hey, they were sweating, man. They were sweating. Vivi's forehead. My God, yeah. Oda cooked with this one. I will admit, you know, reading One Piece, seeing One Piece as a kid, I really did like Vivi. You know, I will admit it. Nowadays, I'll never say it, but back in the day, I was a Vivi fan. I really was. And also, by the way, speaking of being a fan of characters, you might be asking, Sai, why do you like the Knights of God? They're bad people. Yes, but that's kind of the thing. You know, I root for villains in most series, as long as they're fun, cool, or powerful, right? I feel like that's true for most series. You know, look at Naruto. I like Madara. I liked Obito. I like the Akatsuki. Look at Bleach. The Stern Ritter were pretty freaking awesome. The Espada, even cooler. Even My Hero Academia, which I just finished. Pretty good series. All for One. Dabi, Toga, Shigaraki. I think villains are just fun. And here's the thing with villain factions, by the way. Spoiler alert, pretty much villains are conceptualized to lose from the very beginning. The minute an author creates a villain, they pretty much have a death in mind. That is just how it is. These guys will never succeed. Garling, Shamrock, Maffy, Saint Somers, the Yeti guy in the background. These are dedicated and true and blue losers. You could say that for any villain out there. So that's why I root for them. You know, I like an underdog story. And before they lose, I hope they look good. And I hope that they push back the main characters or the main group to a point where they have to evolve. You know, you can look at Garling, and instead of viewing him as just like a bad guy, look at him as cannon fodder for Shanks, for Dragon, for Luffy. He is an obstacle we have to overcome. And I think that is what makes villains so compelling. And then, of course, these guys are just straight up cartoonishly evil. So they're, you know, kind of funny to follow. And yeah, man, you know, when it comes to villains, I do have like a soft spot there just because they're never meant to win. You know, they'll win for like an arc. You know, they'll win a single battle. But and then tomorrow, they're going to get slapped black and blue by the MC. So yeah, I do want to root for strong villains. I do want to have fun with them because they're not going to be around here forever, right? I mean, hell, when you talk about the Celestial Dragons, people debate even nowadays if by the end of the series we kill every Celestial Dragon or if we enslave them or rip away their nobility. Like, that's the thing, man. You know, we already anticipate these guys losing. So why not have fun with them? Why not make them a powerhouse and have this be a visual spectacle? Because here's the thing, the stronger Garling and the Knights of God are, the more insane the fights will be in the future. Like imagine that. Like, if Maffy was, I don't know, never gonna be this case, but imagine Maffy was king level, King the Wildfire. Dude, imagine the fight we could get out of that. Like Maffy versus Zoro, you know, Maffy versus Jinbei. And we're getting like this crazy, you know, 24-minute movie fight. And it's like, yeah, that would be awesome. That is how I view characters like Garling and the boys. I just want the best because we could visually see the best out of them. Since every Gorse member got it, be it on their own or some emu shit, I am certain he is capable of using it. More like he has loser's haki. No! Yeah, I mean, the theory that Emu gives them Conqueror's Haki, that could be done. I mean, hell, we got Haki Knots here. We got magic. Wouldn't be super crazy. One thing too, as far as Garling, like, personally having Conqueror's Haki, I don't think it looks bad, simply because Shanks has it, and we don't know if Conqueror's Haki is necessarily hereditary, but if it is, things are looking good for Garling, right? We look at Garp, Conqueror's Haki, Dragon, most likely Conqueror's Haki, and then Luffy. Maybe Garling is the same way, but he could just be like a Judge character, where Sanji's a lot stronger than Judge, and Judge fell off pretty hard. Now, for the last poll, do any current Knights of God have Conqueror's Haki? Also, one more thing, tidbit on my lore, but I really enjoyed Western Knights as a kid growing up. I loved medieval stuff. So seeing that these guys were the Holy Knights, seeing that they were the Knights of God, there was something in me that just itched a little bit. I don't know if you guys play Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's a fallen archetype now. But when they released the Noble Knights in Yu-Gi-Oh, which are based on Arthurian tales, I was going crazy, brother. I was loving it. I just love knights. So that is why I think I personally gravitated towards these losers. And like I said, I still hope for the best when it comes to them. But now, do any of the current Knights of God have Conqueror's Haki? Of course, this does not include Garling because he has been promoted. Looking at this, 60% of people say yes. But the only Knight of God that has Conqueror's Haki is Shamrock, Shanks' brother, which is very fair. We have seen in the series before that when there are twins, they typically have identical powers. A great example, Donachino family. I forgot their names. Like one of them is Campachino, the other one is Barbara or something. But yeah, they had very identical fighting capabilities. So Shanks having Conqueror's Haki, I think just sets Shamrock up for the same thing. So here we have it. 30% actually believe that multiple Knights of God have Conqueror's Haki. I don't know who this could be. Could be Gunko, could be Killingham, could be St. Somers, or it could be one of the other 4, 5, or 6 people that we have not met yet. And if you look back at the Scopper line, you could just say that Scopper never fought these guys that have Conqueror's Haki. Or you could say that because Scopper's era was so long ago, right? Roger died 24 years ago, that the God Knights that Scopper fought are not here today. They've been cycled out. And you could look at Somers and you're like, well, what about Somers, Sai? He was in the past and he's here in the present day. Well, maybe he's just the old guy that stuck around. Maybe he's the one guy that didn't want to retire. There's a couple of different ways we could look at St. Somers and the Knights of God, and I think that is definitely one of them. So now, 10% believe that none of these guys have Conqueror's Haki. Not the God Knights, not even Shamrock. So personally, I think it's just Shamrock. I do lean towards the majority here. I think it is just Shamrock, but my heart, like Bonnie Taylor. Yeah? Like Bonnie Taylor, I want to believe that multiple of them have Conqueror's Haki. I want at least 3, brother. Kind of like how the Straw Hats have Luffy, Zoro, and soon-to-be Sanji, in my opinion. Give them 3. It could be Shamrock, could be Gunko even, and maybe there's one more guy out there from the Buffett family that has Conqueror's Haki. The 3 families that were vying for first place at God Valley. Maybe that was foreshadowing. The Man Myers, the Garlands, the Bavets. We haven't seen the Bavets yet. Maybe they're going to come in with the sauce. On to the comment section. Time to get my heart broken. This says, the real reason Shanks went to the Holy Land was to help Shamrock with a lifetime supply of Haki Knots. Dude, you guys can see, the Haki Knot agenda has really taken off, man. I love it, dude. The one thing, I saw somebody say this. They were like, the one thing that was supposed to hype up Shanks became his greatest enemy. Because we saw the Joy Boy Haki Knot, and then Dory and Brogy were like, oh my god, it's such kind Haki. It's like red-haired Shanks. They took that, and now they're using it against Shanks. It is insane. Gabon himself said Harold was the first Knight of God he fought with Conquerors, so the old gen ones probably aren't, but Shamrock has pretty good odds for having it. See, there we go. Yeah, old gen, no. New gen, maybe. Only Shamrock. Garling has it for sure, but he's the Gorsey now. If Garling still counts, then I'm guessing him and Shamrock. If the Gorsey have it, then some of the God Knights have it too, like Harold. Emu be braiding in the flower room. Okay. Speaking of Emu, one thing that I found that was pretty cool, I'm sure somebody's talked about this already, but currently I'm about to finish up Dressrosa. I'm on another rewatch, and I never noticed this, but in episode 699, at 21 minutes and 24 seconds, Doflamingo talks about how the Celestial Dragons didn't want to let him back into the Holy Land. And what's really cool about that is that while he was talking about being rejected, we see a blue butterfly, the same one that's typically in Emu's room, flying around Doflamingo, and Doflamingo kills it. And it's like, bro, We don't even learn about Emu for another 300 episodes, and yet Emu's butterfly shows up all the way back in Dressrosa. I thought that was a crazy callback. I don't know if, like, you know, somebody's already talked about that before, but I saw that. I was like, yo, I gotta share that, man. That's so crazy. The foreshadowing, brother. One more thing, too, is that it would be insane if none of the God Knights, you know, even Shamrock, don't have Conqueror's Haki. Because at that point, you might as well just let Doflamingo back on the squad, dude. Doflamingo has Conqueror's Haki, man. Doflamingo really wanted to be that guy, too. That is the most egregious thing, by the way. Doflamingo wanted to be a straight killer for the world government, but they said no. All because Doflamingo's dad wanted to be a human. I just have no clue, brother. And then you have Shanks over here, you know, coming back home, you know, getting pat on the back by Shamrock and Garling and the boys. The preferential treatment is insane. I guess Doflamingo just didn't come back with, like, the greatest of, I wouldn't say intentions. He didn't come back with the greatest image because he brought his dad's head to the Holy Land. So maybe the Celestial Dragon saw that and they're like, hey, this kid is too crazy even for us. Yeah, hey, maybe we don't let Doflamingo up here. You know, his dad's head? I kind of liked Homing, man. Yeah, I didn't want to let him back up here, but I kind of liked him. I don't know. And the thing with Doflamingo too, another egregious thing is that he knows about the sacred treasure of the Holy Land. And now the world government is just getting bribed and blackmailed by Doflamingo because he has that info. Brother, just let him on board. You let Doflamingo on board, you don't have to worry about him leaking anything. It's crazy. It's so crazy. There's got to be more to the Doflamingo story. No. When he breaks out, I need to learn how he learned about the sacred treasure and how they just didn't let him back home. Also, one more thing too, another character that, you know, could have been a Knight of God, but we don't know about, Mihawk. Obviously, Mihawk is a really big talking point whenever we talk about Shanks, Shamrock, and the Celestial Dragons. Still don't know his origins, but one big thing I always go back to is the fact that in a One Piece video game, not canon, just gotta say that outright, not canon, but in a video game, Pirate Warriors 4, one of Mihawk's attacks is called 16 New Moons, and if you tie it back, Doflamingo, his final attack is 16 heavenly bullets or something of the sort. So it's like, yeah, like Mihawk having the same named attack as Doflamingo, or at least same naming scheme, I think could be an indicator that he potentially could have been from the Knights of God or a bastard child. Maybe a kid like Bonnie where a celestial dragon took him on and just dumped him on the side of the road. I think Mihawk's backstory will be tied in here somehow. Sorry, I don't want to like shoehorn Mihawk into like a random video, but you know, it is something that pops into my mind every now and then. And if that is the case, dude, another character that could have been buffing the God Knights. Please, Oda, don't make Shamrock a fraud. The guy is getting voiced by Kenjiro Suda himself. Dude, yes. Nanami's voice actor, Kenjiro Suda, coming in hot with the Shamrock VA. Trailer was immaculate. If we take that voice actor and put him on a fraud, that's got to be a crime. That's got to be a crime. The Holy Fraud Knights. Gunko maybe has it, but it's from Emu. Shamrock and maybe one more. 2 feels like a wish on a star, yeah. I feel like the God Knights lose Conqueror's Haki when they become God Knights. It would be weird if they could use something that hurts them. It'd be weird if they could use something that hurts them. I don't think it would hurt them. You know, like, if they just master it and they can, like, eject it rather than inject it on themselves, yeah, I don't think it would hurt them whatsoever. It's just like a nice power boost, really. Pretty sure the most recent chapter proved that none of them do, considering how much of a big deal they made by the fact that Harold had it compared to the others, marked by Emu. Also, God Knights are complete servants. That is not the mindset of a conqueror. It's actually the opposite, which is a key aspect of a conqueror. This is still debatable. You know, when it comes to a conqueror's mindset, that could mean very many things. I mean, hell, look at Katakuri. He has Conqueror's Haki. Doesn't exactly have ambitions of a conqueror. He's just a family guy who loves his family. And then you could look at Naguri from the One Piece filler. He's just a random dude who got beaten by Roger. You could also look at the Gorosei. They all have Conqueror's Haki, unless you believe it's from Emu. There's just a lot of people in the series who have been, I wouldn't say subservient, but they've worked under other people, and they do have Conqueror's Haki to some extent. So this is still debatable. We don't really know too much about Conqueror's Haki. We just have a couple of lines from Rayleigh, who talked about the mindset, And then you have the Kuja Pirates who talk about, oh, like, you know, you're born with it. It is still up in the air right now. And then, of course, you know, a big thing is that people believe that Sanji might get it. I held a poll, which we do need to revisit here in a couple of days. But the question was if Sanji would get Conqueror's Haki here in Elbaf. And a majority of people do believe he will get it. And a big topic was this right here, right? Does Sanji have the mindset of a conqueror? People are like, oh, but he's a chef. You know, he just wants to find the all blue. And it's like, well, you know, I don't think that really matters. I mean, hell, look at Scopper. Scopper, at least right now, he doesn't really have any grand ambitions. He was just kind of following Roger. So yeah, I think this is like up in the air still. I don't think this is like a yes or no kind of thing. I think there's a lot of nuance here, but that's just me. Shamrock will be top tier. It's actually pretty surprising that trash like Celestial Dragons can have Conqueror's Haki. Gunko and Shamrock for sure have it. If Garling produced 2 kings and he isn't one, all hope is lost on him. Garling and Shamrock, that's why they're commanders of the Holy Knights. All the Gorosei have Conqueror's Haki. Maybe they did, and maybe they will get promoted. But wouldn't having no will of your own mean no Haki? Not necessarily. Let's say King Harold, for example. He had no will of his own when Imu took over, but he still has Conqueror's Haki. And of course, King Harold was willing to, you know, subjugate himself to Imu and dedicate himself to Imu. And he still has Conqueror's Haki. You know, I mean, granted, you could say he already had it beforehand, so he wouldn't lose it. But yeah, there's just a lot of ways you could view this. And of course, like I said, there's no real age limit to when you can lock Conqueror's Haki from what we know of. So even if they don't have it current day, they could have a Haki Bloom, right? That is always a possibility. I'm just assuming everyone has Conqueror's Haki at this point. Shamrock, I definitely see. Others are very iffy. Come on, it's gotta be Shamrock and the Dracula family representatives. Also, if we count all the Haki Knots they have in their sleeve, we could really start talking numbers. That's so funny. Yeah, they just have it in their sleeves. Bro, Polly would be insane as a God Knight. Polly would be a straight menace. But yeah, that is pretty much it for today, guys. Let me know your thoughts on the God Knights down below. Do you still have faith in the God Knights being strong in the future? Will they get buffed by Imu? Let me know all your thoughts down there. Personally, like I said, I still have a lot of hope for the boys. They still are performing at a very high level. It's just that when compared to other top tiers, they kind of fumble a little bit, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you again for watching this video all the way to the very end. I really freaking appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your day, brothers.